So it's Friday night, and I figured, why don't we do a little bit of a interesting story time tonight to give you guys a little bit of a insight of the craziness of trademarks within Transformers. So I was having a little talk this evening with one of the Transformer licensors about how the Canadian-based and Montreal HQ company, gaming company of Kabam Games, is finally ending their 5-year license of their mobile game of Transformers Forged to Fight. And we were talking about licenses and trademarks and everything. And it just got me started to think about my boy Hot Rod and all the crazy stuff that his trademark has had to go through and all the different hands that held it through all those many years. And a lot of people don't really know the complete story with it, where it ended up and everything like that. I'm someone that sat down and did all those receipts many years ago, just because I was obsessed with that character and still am actually to this day. And let's do that, shall we? And maybe you guys will learn something from it. It'll be a fun little journey and a little interesting story to tell here on the Friday night just to relax. So Hot Rod, of course, the original 1986 character. His trademark was issued in February of 1986. Again, Hasbro was going to be making the Hot Rod toy. And that was that, the short-term thoughts of what was going to be done with that character and that trademark and everything. Who knows? Who knows? They didn't know. So in 1986, that trademark was minted, and we got that first 1986 toy and all its running changes and variants and everything like that. In 1987, we got the Target Master. And then in 1990, the trademark expired. Now, they refreshed that trademark. Had a lot of hope for Transformers, even in 1990 when going up against something like Ninja Turtles and all the other popular toy lines going into the 90s. But they did nothing with that trademark for a majority of the time, and literally at the last second, in the final year of their trademark, to avoid getting fines from the U.S. Patent Office and everything like that, they put out a product called Hot Rod, and it only got released in the UK version in Europe, which was they took Laser Rod Jolt, they called it Hot Rod, and they put it out there, and that was that. And then that was that. And it was a Decepticon named Hot Rod in a pre-internet world, which I'm pretty sure was very confusing for a lot of UK people seeing a Decepticon Hot Rod toy with his bio that said it's time for the Autobots to move over. I'm here to help them on their way. Oh no, he's a traitor. He's a traitor. But it was just Jolt. It was just Laser Rod Jolt. They just called him Hot Rod over there to avoid getting a fine. And they let the trademark lapse. Just as they waited to the last second to use it, they didn't bother to re-register it. And that was that. And that's where Mattel just slided in and grabbed the Hot Rod trademark. And Mattel, oh Mattel, they would keep that trademark for near 20 years. And they would throw it on anything they could. It's Mattel. It's Hot Wheels. Putting Hot Rod on a Hot Wheels product, not very difficult. And that they did for many, many years. And during that time, during that 20 years that Mattel had Hot Rod, well, the Hot Rod name was absent from Transformers. Granted, they found ways to feature other characters. Hot Rod is not the top tier of Transformers. And during the Beast Wars era, it wasn't really that important to have a character named Hot Rod when everyone is not vehicles. So everyone is beasts and animals. So it was okay to not have Hot Rod and to survive without it, and Mattel having it and doing their thing. But when it came time to bringing back the past and focusing on vehicles, the name Hot Rod had to come back in some shape or form. But they couldn't get it. There was no way to get it. Mattel had it. So when it came time to feature the Car Robots in Disguise series, and you have this character named Sideburn that they would have loved to call Hot Rod because he had a Hot Rod colored super mode, they couldn't do it. When they had Transformers Armada and they wanted to call the character of Hot Shot, they wanted to call him Hot Rod. He was going to be called Hot Rod in his Japanese version of Micron Legend or Micron no Densetsu, but they couldn't. So they called him Hot Shot, using that trademark that existed from Robots in Disguise. There was a little spy changer with a flame chest of his own called Hot Shot, so they kept that trademark and put it on that character instead. Worked out in the end, I guess, in terms of the notoriety. We associate the name Hot Shot today with that yellow Audi-looking Armada character. When it came to 2002, in the middle of Armada, they were going to start to do the G1 reissues. And this is where trademarks started to get a little dicey and a little difficult, because now they were going to be revisiting those old characters in their old toys and be featuring them in product that's going to be celebrating them. You got to have the name Ultra Magnus for an Ultra Magnus G1 toy, or Optimus Prime, or Trax, or any of those. And there was a lot of weird ones that happened along the way. Silver Streak, and of course Jazz with his Meister situation. And then when they got to Hot Rod, they're like, well, what do we do with Hot Rod? Can't call him Hot Rod, and you don't want to call him Hot Shot. And if we call him Rodimus, that would just be confusing because we have a Rodimus Prime reissue we're going to do later. So they stuck with Rodimus Major. Sure. It would get weirder for Hot Rod later. So that was that. You go into Energon, and they have a Rodimus Prime. He was called Rodimus Convoy in the Super Link version. So they called him Rodimus for that version. That one made sense because it was a leader Hot Rod character, so it's Rodimus. When you go into Cybertron, you had the red repaint of Hot Shot, which they called Excellion over here as an homage to his Japanese name in Galaxy Force, which was Cybertron in Japan. But I'm pretty sure they would have loved to call that red repaint with the flame hood Hot Rod. And the spoiler. Even the spoiler. Come on, guys. When you look at Animated, originally the plan for that character was to be called Hot Rod, Animated Hot Rod. But when they were going to do the toy, they couldn't do that. And visually that character was Hot Rod, so they called it Rodimus Minor. And of course, later on in the fiction, they called it Rodimus Prime. Primes were a thing in the lore, and it just kind of made sense afterwards, and it all helped itself in the end. But literally at that point, going from 2006 up until 2015, how Hasbro handled it more or less was, well, if it's the guy holding the Matrix of Leadership with a flame chest, he's Rodimus Prime. If it's that guy who's not holding the Matrix of Leadership with a flame chest, that's Rodimus. So it was Rodimus or Rodimus Prime. And we had that little dance for many, 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 many years. Many years. And it created problems because I'm pretty sure at some point Hasbro wanted to feature the Hot Rod character in the Michael Bay movies, but they couldn't because the only way they could have used that name of that character would have been Rodimus, and maybe that would have been too confusing because it sounds very leadership related, and you know the mainstream audience that was consuming the Transformer Michael Bay movies would have not understood stuff outside of the lore. That didn't stop them. There was a Dark of the Moon 3-pack that was a Walmart exclusive that featured a character named Rodimus, which was just the repaint of the Universe Legend scale figure from 2008. And it was just kind of tacked on there. Yeah, this is our very first movie, Rodimus. And it's just kind of tacked on as an extra thing with no story, bio, or fiction. It's just there. It was an oddity. And during all that time, too, there was two other oddities. In some European countries and in South America, the Robot Heroes line, which the Robot Heroes Rodimus Hot Rod figure, it was Hot Rod, but they called it Rodimus, was released as an individual blind packed figure over there as Hot Rod on his included trading card. Now, granted, the packaging itself didn't have the Hot Rod trademark on it. It just said Transformers, Robot Heroes, and they were all blind packed. But each one of them featured a trading card, and the trading card didn't have a trademark on it. So I think that's how they kind of got away with it, combined with the fact that it was sold in other countries, and it was kind of low tier. No one knew what was going on, so they kind of got away with it. And then you also look at what happened with Hard Hero, the statue company. Hard Heroes had the license to do a bunch of Transformer statues. They were in a lot of financial problems. They ended up putting out a Hot Rod statue that was limited to like 4,000 numbers. and they didn't know about the trademark problems and all the trademark issues, and they ended up again with a lot of financial problems and ended up getting bought out by Warner Brothers, and they liquidated all their prototypes and their inventory as a result of that. And a certain someone who you're listening to their voice right now learned about that whole story and behind the scenes and ended up buying that prototype of Hot Rod. But yeah, that's a whole other. But the point is that one too, also there was a weird oddity there due to mismanagement, the licensors not knowing about the trademark, and the company pretty much having its own problems internally. But then things got even more weird. In 2011, after having that Hot Rod trademarks for near 20 years, Mattel didn't refresh the Hot Rod trademark. And Playmates slided in. Playmates Toys slided in and secured it. Now, Playmates Toys at the time was working on in 2011, their 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles product line for their big revival with the Nicktoons cartoon and everything. And the rumor was, and this can't be confirmed, but the rumor was initially they got the Hot Rod trademark because there was plans to do a crossover with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the WWE wrestling crossover figures. And they would do 2 waves of that. There would be a Roddy Piper figure crossover with Michelangelo with Ninja Turtles. And it would have Hot Rod written on his shirt, much like the original wrestler Roddy Piper had it on his shirt back in the 80s and 90s. But no Hot Rod was written on the packaging. There was no trademarking. So I think that the rumor was that's why they got Hot Rod, but they ended up never using it for that intended purpose. Instead, they used that Hot Rod trademark across a bunch of different Ninja Turtle products, specifically Michelangelo and his Hot Rodded accessory. And the Hot Rodded accessory was trademarked Hot Rod trademark. And it was like that for a couple of years. And then Playmates dropped it in 2015. And guess who slid in? Hasbro. They swooped, they captured it with their claws, and Hot Rod was finally home. And first thing they used it with, 2016, they used it on that Titans Return Deluxe Class Hot Rod figure with Fire Drive. We won't get into Fire Drive and how he should be called Firebolt. That's a whole other story involving a Harry Potter broom accessory toy. That's a whole other stupid story, but the point is that Hot Rod was back, and this led to Hot Rod being finally considered to be used for the live-action movies now that they finally have the Hot Rod trademark back. There was a character that was kind of in early development called Bumblebee's Sidekick, didn't have a name yet at the time, which later on would evolve into Hot Rod during the Last Night movie, and that is that. And as of 2016, up to this day, as of 2016 to 2022, and of course going into 2023 soon, as of this recording, Hot Rod has stayed with Hasbro, and no doubt they'll never make any mistakes again, like they've done in the past with some of their other trademarks, including Bumblebee, Jazz, Shockwave, and many others. They got all those back, but now Hot Rod is back too. And we have a reissue based of Hot Rod's old toy coming out soon with those new colors. We have that new Velocitron Wave 2 figure that's coming out. And no doubt there'll be more Hot Rod branded and Hot Rod trademark related stuff from Hasbro in the future under the Transformer emblem. But that more or less is the weird and wild history of Hot Rod and his trademark and how it went all over the place. And there's a lot of these. There's a lot of these within Transformers. There's a lot of them. Let me tell you about the story of how Transformers kept the Devastator trademark by putting it on a Street Fighter G.I. Joe toy that was a repaint of the Snowcat. It gets weird. But yeah, I hope you learned something today. I figured it'd be a fun one to do on a Friday night for you guys to kick back, relax, and just learn about the trademark history of some of our favorite Transformer characters. He definitely is mine. So I hope you learned something. Hope you had a good time. And tomorrow we'll have our Saturday night live stream. Hopefully we'll have some new news to discuss and some cool things to talk about. And I'll see you then.